All sorts of Breeders' Cup Challenge win and year in races this week. We'll be focusing on Saturday's Champagne Stakes at Belmont Park. $250,000, a one-turn mile for 2-year-olds, a win and year in the TVG Juvenile division presented by the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. On Wednesday, a field of 6 was drawn. Heavily favored at 3-5, Jackie's Warrior. Second choice at 8-5, Reinvestment Risk. This is Jerry Bailey. Jerry, both these horses come out of the Hopeful at Saratoga. They finished 1-2 in the Hopeful as well. When we go back and we look at that race, Reinvestment Risk was actually the even money favorite going into the Hopeful, but Jackie's Warrior broke like a shot, controlled the pace, ball game over.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way he runs. That's the way his trainer, Steve Asmussen, trains him. And it's not a shock that they're first out of the gate and they carry their speed, especially if they have any quality. And Jackie's Warrior certainly does. 3 for 3 now. There was no excuse in the race. Jackie's Warrior was clearly the best horse. Now they stretch out to a mile, but I don't see, because it's a one-turn mile at Belmont, I don't see the distance being a big problem for Jackie's Warrior. I think he probably does the same thing.
And one of the interesting things about that race is just to show you how fast it was. I mean, you look at the chart for the Hopeful, that kind of bears that out. Reinvestment Risk was 10 1/4 lengths ahead of the third place finisher, who was a good horse himself in Muda Savic, who came back out of that race for Todd Pletcher and won the Bourbon at Keeneland in his next start. Then it was 9 lengths back to the fourth place finisher, 13 lengths back to the fifth place finisher. A very fast race. Now, when we spin this forward and we look ahead, assuming one of these two horses, assuming they run 1-2 in the Champagne and they move on now to Keeneland at 1 1/16 around 2 turns, what are your thoughts about Jackie's Warrior carrying his speed around 2 turns?
Well, I just said I have no question about the Belmont because, I mean, the Champagne at Belmont, because it's a one-turn mile, the extra furlong doesn't bother me. But if you're going to have a question, it's going to be going 2 turns with either of these horses. And for the first time, that would be a question. But I'm like you. They're so much faster right now than anybody else. I don't see it being a huge problem. But I think we will get some kind of a measuring stick because Midnight Bourbon comes out of Kentucky to be in this race as well. He'll be third choice is my guess. And he was beaten by a horse named Sittin' on Go, which is a decent kind of horse in his last out in Kentucky. So I guess we'll get some kind of sense on how much better Jackie's Warrior and Reinvestment Risk are. That's kind of my feeling.
Let's look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in terms of some of the other horses out there that these two will have to face when they get to Keeneland. Let's start with a horse trained by Brad Cox, owned by Godolphin, named Essential Quality, the winner of the Breeders' Futurity. He looked pretty good.
Hustled out of the gate, and then for some strange reason, he looked like he was bearing out going into the first turn because he was in the 4-path. The rider had his head cocked in a little bit. Nobody was pushing him out there. There was gap between he and the other horse inside of him. So I was wondering what was going on, and finally down the backside, he settled. It looked like he assumed the stalking position, and then he took the lead on the turn and drew away in the stretch, actually slightly laying in a little bit. So I think there's a lot of greenness still there. I think there's improvement with Essential Quality. And I wouldn't write him off. I wouldn't just assume that Jackie's Warrior is just so much the best because these 2-year-olds, as you know, can improve a lot from race to race.
In the American Pharoah, 1-2 finishers were Get Her Number and Rombauer, both coming off of turf efforts in the Del Mar Juvenile Turf. The race a little slower than the Breeders' Futurity. Get Her Number stalks the pace and wins under Flavien Prat. Rombauer comes from way back and is gaining slowly at the end in second. They looked okay.
I would argue that I'd pick Rombauer coming back in the next race. And here's why. He got away all right from the gate, but then he looked like his back end clipped his front end. It was like he lost his action for just a brief step and then quickly regained it. But by consequence, he was last going into the first turn, and then he makes this long, very wide, Mike Smith kind of protracted run around horses, moving quickly. And then, like, at the 16th pole, it appeared like he was going to get beat a couple lengths. Mike Smith, having hit him 3 or 4 times, I think, left-handed, thought the same thing, I believe. And so he kind of wrapped up, which is understandable. We'll get him next time. And the horse kind of on his own volition closed in and was only beaten 3/4 of a length. So I think there's more upside for Rombauer than there is the winner.
All right. Get Her Number earned a Buyer's speed figure of 84 compared to 88 for Essential Quality. Get Her Number, owned by Gary Barber, trained by Peter Miller. Rombauer is trained by Mike McCarthy. All right, you mentioned Sitting on Go a little bit earlier as the winner of the Iroquois at Churchill Downs, which we televised at NBC on the Kentucky Derby undercard. He was 24-1 in that race. Dale Romans actually had another horse in there that was a much shorter price than Sitting on Go, but Sitting on Go just ran him down, just rolled over him in the stretch, and visually was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's a flat mile. They broke from the chute at Churchill Downs, and he had the 2 posts. And inside going a flat mile is just not a good post to have, especially with a young horse, because the competition drops over in front of you, a lot of dirt in your face. Then he's got to work out a trip. But down the backside, he steadily advanced and then went from the 2 path to the 3 path to almost the 5 path as he worked his way, moving quickly on the turn. Had to go around most of them as he straightened out for home and just gobbled up the horse on the lead. I thought it was a very impressive race for taking the worst of it. The race is better than what it looks.
And the figure on that was exactly the same as Get Her Number, buyer speed figure of 84. And again, as you pointed out, that was a 1-turn mile. And Dale Romans had told us on the phone before the Iroquois that he thought that Sitting on Go would get better as the distances got longer, that he thought right from the start that Sitting on Go was going to be a distance type horse. So he could conceivably take the next step at the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, Randy, is, the East Coast horses, I believe at this point, are better than the West Coast horses. I just really do, headed by Jackie's Warrior. So I guess the question mark with him, if he gets by the Champagne, is impressive as he has been so far, will the 2 turns be any problem at all? We'll see.